Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at some really unusual situations. Developmental psychologists call them experiments of nature.
Right. And it's maybe a slightly dramatic term, but it fits.
It does. So, okay, let's be clear. These aren't planned scientific experiments like you'd see in a lab.
Not at all. These are, well, rare and often really difficult real-world circumstances.
But because they're so unusual, they actually give us these profound insights into, how humans normally develop.
Exactly. It's like trying to understand the rules of a game by watching what happens when something totally unexpected changes those rules.
Yeah, when development gets disrupted by something extraordinary, the results can really highlight what's absolutely essential for healthy growth.
By seeing what happens when certain things are missing or drastically altered, we get a much clearer picture of their role, their fundamental role in shaping us.
So we've got two main kinds of these experiments of nature to explore today. First, there's the incredibly impactful and, frankly, deeply sad case of a girl known as Genie.
Ah, yes, Genie. Her experience with severe isolation, it's provided this unique, though tragic, perspective on critical periods, especially for language and social stuff.
And then building on that, we'll also talk about what we've learned from studies with animals.
Right. And it's important to understand why researchers might turn to animal models here.
Definitely. Because sometimes exploring the effects of certain environments, particularly social ones, raises huge ethical questions when it comes to humans. Animal studies can offer insights you just couldn't get otherwise.
Though we should definitely acknowledge these are sensitive topics all around. Studying extreme deprivation, whether it's Genie's case or animal research, needs careful handling and responsible interpretation.
Absolutely. So let's start with Genie. Her story is, well, it's one that really resonates in the field.
It does. She spent most of her childhood in conditions that are hard to even imagine. Extreme social isolation, severe deprivation.
Just picture it, a young life with almost zero interaction. Very little exposure to language. None of the usual sights, sounds, and social input most kids get.
And what makes her situation so important for understanding development is that it was this rare, almost unprecedented opportunity to look at the idea of sensitive periods.
Sensitive periods, right? These windows in time where we're supposedly primed to learn certain things.
Exactly. So the big question was, could a child who missed out on language and social learning for so many years actually pick those things up later? Her age kept going up, but her developmental input was just missing.
So what did the researchers actually find? What did they observe?
Well, it was pretty revealing. When Genie was discovered, she was already past the typical age for learning language, but she had basically no language skills, none at all.
Wow. But she did learn eventually, right? At least some things.
She did learn some words, yes. With care and instruction, her vocabulary grew. But, and this is key, she really struggled with grammar. Putting words together into complex, meaningful sentences was incredibly difficult for her.
Okay, so she could learn labels, like nouns, but not the rules, the structure of language.
Pretty much. And that difference, her ability to learn words, but not really syntax, strongly suggests there is a sensitive period for acquiring the complex rules of language.
Meaning the brain is just more receptive to that kind of learning early on.
It implies that, that the window for easily picking up grammar might narrow significantly after early childhood.
And it wasn't just language, was it? Her social and emotional development was also affected.
Oh, deeply. Very significantly. Things like forming typical social bonds, understanding social cues, just behaving in expected social ways. These were huge challenges for her.
So what about attachment? Forming those close connections?
That was incredibly difficult, too. Her experiences really highlighted that social interaction isn't just about talking. It's fundamental for learning how to regulate your emotions, understanding social norms, building those attachments.
Her isolation just had this profound impact on her ability to navigate the social world.
Absolutely. It reinforces just how critical those early relationships and social experiences are for shaping who we become socially and emotionally.
Genie's case, as tough as it is, it really hammers home the impact of the early environment, especially for language, for social interaction.
It strongly suggests our brains might have these periods where they're particularly ready, geared up to learn certain things.
And if you miss that window,
It can be incredibly difficult, maybe impossible to fully catch up later. It really shows that crucial interplay between our innate potential, what we're born with, and the nurture we receive.
She had the biological capacity, presumably.
Yes, but the extreme lack of input, that social and linguistic input, it had lasting consequences. And of course, it also highlights the immense ethical responsibilities when studying individuals in such vulnerable situations.
Which is a good transition to our second type of experiment of nature research using animal models.
Right. And again, the key here is that these studies allow researchers to look at the effects of specific environmental factors, often social ones, in controlled ways you couldn't with humans.
Why turn to animals? Is it just about ethics?
Ethics is a huge part of it, yes. But it also allows for more control, investigating fundamental processes, sometimes looking at the impact of conditions that, thankfully, are very rare in humans, but where understanding the principles is still vital.
Okay, so let's talk findings. What have animal studies focusing on social isolation or deprivation generally shown us?
Well, quite consistently, across different species, animals raised in social isolation show significant impacts on their social behavior later on.
How so?
They often struggle with things like forming bonds with others in their species, reading social signals correctly, engaging in typical play or mating behaviors. Their social toolkit seems underdeveloped.
And it's not just behavior, right? Does it affect the brain itself?
There's evidence for that too, yes. Limited environmental stimulation, including social interaction, during key developmental periods in animals has been shown to impact brain structure and function.
Like actual physical differences?
Uh-huh. Differences in neural pathways, brain development. Deprivation can leave a mark. And these findings in animals give us clues about the biological mechanisms that might be at play when humans experience early deprivation.
It's fascinating how these animal studies can then circle back and inform our understanding of human development.
Exactly. Even though we're talking different species, seeing the effects of early deprivation in animals helps us form hypotheses about potential impacts in humans. We identify fundamental principles that seem to cross species lines.
Principles we couldn't ethically test directly on people.
Precisely. It helps us understand the why behind some of the developmental outcomes we see in difficult human circumstances.
Okay, and thinking about specific animal research, there are some quite famous studies involving monkeys, right? With surrogate mothers.
Ah, yes, those are classic. The basic idea involved infant monkeys who had a choice between two artificial mothers.
One made of wire, but it had the food.
Correct. A wire mother that provided milk, and the other was covered in soft terry cloth but offered no food.
And the big finding was,
The overwhelming finding was the monkeys vastly preferred the cloth mother. They spent almost all their time clinging to the soft mother for comfort and security.
even though the wire mother had the food.
Yep. They'd only pop over to the wire mother quickly to feed, then right back to the cloth one. It was a powerful demonstration.
Of what, specifically?
That attachment, that early bond, isn't just about who feeds you. It's not just about satisfying basic hunger needs.
Right. This really flew in the face of some earlier ideas, didn't it? The idea that babies just bond with the food source.
It absolutely did. The monkey showed us loud and clear. Comfort, warmth, that feeling of security. These are fundamental needs in their own right. Hugely important for development.
So the implications for us for understanding human babies and children.
They're significant. It underscores the critical importance of responsive, warm caregiving, providing comfort, creating a secure base for infants. It's not just about food and diapers.
It's about that emotional connection, that sense of safety.
Exactly. For healthy social and emotional growth, kids need that warmth, affection, and a reliable caregiver who provides security way beyond just physical needs.
Okay, so let's pull these threads together. We've got Genie's tragic isolation and these animal studies, particularly the monkey research. What's the big picture here?
Well, what's really striking is how the evidence converges, right? Coming from these very different situations, one human case study, controlled animal experiments, they both point powerfully to the vital role of early experience.
Especially social interaction and environmental stimulation.
Absolutely critical for both humans and animals. The specifics might differ, but the core principle holds. Early nurture profoundly shapes later development.
So one overarching conclusion must be about that interplay again. Nature and nurture.
Definitely. It really drives home that while we come into the world with certain biological potentials, our environment, especially early on, plays a massive role in how those potentials unfold, particularly for social skills, emotional regulation, language.
And even though Genie's case and some animal deprivations are extreme,
They still serve as these really potent reminders of just how important nurturing, responsive environments are for typical development.
The underlying needs, interaction, stimulation, secure attachment. They're fundamental for all kids.
hmm And thinking about that naturally leads to considering, the broader implications, how we support parents' early childhood programs.
Right. Understanding how deep these impacts go can help us create environments that really foster healthy development from the start.
It gives you a real appreciation for caregiving, doesn't it? It's not just tasks. It's building the foundation for a child's entire future social, emotional, cognitive.
So wrapping up, it's kind of amazing how looking at these experiments of nature, these unusual and sometimes difficult situations, can illuminate such fundamental truths about being human.
It really does, and it leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it, for you, the listener? What do these stories, Genie's resilience or lack thereof, the animal findings, suggest about how lasting those early impacts are? And what are the big questions still out there about recovery from early adversity?
Definitely gives you a deeper appreciation for that complex dance between nature and nurture in making us who we are. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.